This episode is sponsored by the Live Alcohol Experiment, a 30-day science-based and compassion-led journey where you learn to develop a healthier relationship with alcohol without relying on willpower. Why? Because the truth is that willpower runs out. Instead, you learn how to focus on what you gain, not what you give up, so you can feel good about the decisions you make without shame or guilt. With the 30 days of video training, virtual daily coaching, and a private and supportive community, you get that and so much more. Join us today to get happier, healthier, and to take back your life. Your Live Alcohol Experiment starts on the 1st, so sign up at livealcoholexperiment.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. I'm here with Skye. How are you, Skye?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. So let's start at the beginning. What was your first drink and where did it kind of all start for you?
Well, my first drink was actually Chambord that we stole out of my friend's parents' liquor cabinet, and it tasted like cough syrup. But I started drinking at about 14, and I liked the way it numbed down my crazy mind. Mm-hmm. I was a good girl. I was a smart girl. And I think alcohol was a way for me to rebel. It was something I could control, and it was a way to feel like I was fitting in. And so when I went to college, I went to a pretty big party school. It was University of Missouri-Rolla, so right in the middle of the United States, a bunch of engineers. And the year before I went there in 1994, it was in Playboy for one of the top 10 party schools, which is part of why I decided to go. So, I drank like all the kids in college drank. I feel like everybody else was doing it, and I was probably just keeping up with everybody. Although looking back, I realized, I was one of the people that stayed up the latest, partied the longest, walked around the perimeter of the bar or the party and like finding beer cans that were half empty and drinking them, stuff that probably was a little more than the norm. But I just felt like I was keeping up with everybody else. Like I didn't feel like there was anything that special about what I was doing. All my friends drank. And so when, after I graduated and started working, we were all young, we were single, and we were all still partying. I hung out with a lot of servers and people that worked in the service industry. And, I got a job. I was an engineer, and I traveled and went out and partied. I became a teacher after that, and we went to happy hours and we drank. And I think, when it seems like it's normal, you don't quite realize how much you're affecting yourself. So like that waking up with the hangover, waking up still drunk, not remembering what you did, not remembering who you pissed off, or what ex-boyfriend you called, or this was before text messaging or emailed. It just seemed like that constant starting over every day was the norm. That was like 25 years of drinking, really. And by the time I met my husband, so we met at a bar, we got really drunk. Our whole relationship was kind of built off of hanging out and drinking, and we got pregnant, and I had my first child. So, I quit drinking for a while, and toned back to that mommy wine culture. So no longer was I going out and partying with my friends, but we were having play dates and cracking open some beers. We were doing mom's night outs and all of that thing. And so I think, really by the time I decided to quit, my drinking life had like gone on this up and down and up and down and up and down. And I always liked what you guys say in This Naked Mind about how, there's not necessarily like, you don't have to hit a rock bottom in order to decide that this is not serving me. Mm-hmm. And so when I finally decided it was not serving me, my rock bottom was years before, my rock bottom was in my 20s when I was single, and like, there's stories I can't even tell in mixed company, right? But that didn't make me quit. It was by the time I had kids and was able to sort of sit and assess, how alcohol was really taking away from my experience as a mother, that I was finally able to like come to that conclusion of it's time to really look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so what were some of those like specific moments that you were like, okay, this is.
It's funny because I think like I've listened to a lot of this Naked Life people, and I'm like, and a lot of people like, I've tried to quit for years. And I'm like, I hit some really low moments, and I always rationalized it to where alcohol wasn't really the problem. Like, I don't know if it was such that I couldn't face it, but I got married at about 25 to my first husband. And we drank a lot. His nickname was Dick Whiskey. So we got together because we were always the ones that were able to stay up the latest and party the hardest. And so we got married thinking like that's what a great relationship, should be founded on. Of course, it's like a pool of vomit and liquor. And so our marriage lasted not quite 2 years. And then I got divorced and I was single and hitting the bar scene. And so these were my lowest points, is when I was, I was newly divorced and I was single and I was going out by myself and just engaging in some extremely risky behavior, putting myself, my body, my sexuality, my safety at risk on a nightly basis. And at the same time, I was getting a master's degree and becoming a teacher and like showing up and teaching students and living this double life.
Yeah.
But I was doing things on the weekends that, should have left me dead. I was hooking up behind the bar. I mean, I was driving myself home, finding my car in the front lawn, losing my purse, losing my keys regularly. There were several times I had to break into my house because I got home and I was so intoxicated and I didn't know what happened to my purse or my wallet or my keys or my flip phone or anything. And it was dark and I was cold and alone. And so I busted through the back window of my house to open it. And then the next morning, having to triage all that. But even in those darkest moments, like the thought of giving up alcohol, like never even crossed my mind. Because what would I do then? What would I like? It was so entrenched and entwined with my identity that I would rather live that kind of life than give up drinking.
Yeah. 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 I can really relate to that. I mean, there's so much fear in the idea of giving up drinking, and it's fear at like a visceral level. It's not even conscious. You know what I mean? It's this deeply ingrained, like things will not be okay. And I think there's like neurochemical reasons for that. Like our brains really get confused. They think alcohol is like as important as oxygen for our survival when we become really addicted to it. And there's all sorts of sort of sociological reasons for that. All sorts of like, it's amazing. And it's so hard to see it in the moment because that fear is so visceral that it feels like we have to almost distance ourselves from, like we don't even allow ourselves to entertain the idea of giving it up. So you said earlier that you kind of would come up with all these rationalizations or reasons why alcohol wasn't really the problem. Was that continuing to happen even in these moments where you're breaking into your own house and losing your keys and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like I laughed it off. Like, this is who I am, I'm the party girl. I'm the life of the party. Like, watching all those movies, like that one with Cameron Diaz, where she's like, I can't remember, My Sister's Keeper or something, where she's like, she's the one and she's the party girl. And if I wasn't that, then who would I be? So like you talk about that visceral feeling, it almost felt like if I were to quit drinking, it would be like pulling my soul like out of my body. So it just wasn't like, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so out of our realm of possibility in those moments, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
And I lied. I lied and lied. Laura McCohen talks about, there's a whole chapter in her book about the lying piece, and never really realizing how much I lied in order to protect that, like, my relationship with alcohol. I lied to my parents extensively. I lied to my partner, I lied to my friends, and I lied to myself on a daily basis about what it was actually doing to me. I mean, my teeth were like turning black and red, and from all the wine and not brushing them because I would come home and pass out. But yet I would look at myself in the mirror and see that, but tell myself that it wasn't there, or that, this wasn't a problem, or nobody else could see it, or
yeah, I really relate to that. All right. So you're single and you're having, these risky nights out and all that sort of stuff. And then what happens?
So like I said, I'm living this double life. I became a teacher, and I was a really good teacher. I was actually quite good at it, but there were times where, especially I remember my first year of teaching where I tripped over the projector cord and like fell on the floor, and I was laughing. And I realized like I was still drunk. And like, that's not okay. But that part of my brain, like, God, that's not okay. You should feel a ton of shame about this. And I wasn't willing to feel the shame. So I pushed it back and like laughed about it. So, when I eventually met my husband, and we were both kind of in that same place of drinking till we black out. Now we could do it together. So we had this is my current husband, not the first one. Right. They were both built on pools of whiskey. But so we came together and we drank together, and that's what our relationship was built on. And that's hard then when you decide to have a family, like when you decide to have a kid. And I remember being sober for those 9 months and like him still drinking, and how resentful I was. Oh man, I could quit for 9 months in order to have a baby, but I could not wait until I had that baby. I mean, I think we had vodka in the delivery room. Like I had a screwdriver or something. Like I couldn't wait to get back to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a big part of my life.
I really relate to that too, for sure.
Yeah. And it wasn't until my second child was born, actually several years after my second child was born, that I finally decided to quit. And so, I didn't like decide to quit and then try to quit and then not. And then it was like one day I decided, oh my God, I have to quit. And what happened was, so my kids were 2 and 4, and I was 41, and I was out at the bar. We saw Jane Lynch. So Jane Lynch, and she was performing, and then she went out to the bar, and we all went with, and we were like trying to get her to talk to us and stuff. But Jane Lynch, like, I don't think she drinks much. And so here's all these drunk 40-year-old moms pawing all over, trying to get her to like talk to us and give us autographs, and we're dancing. And the next day I saw on Facebook, the bar had posted this panoramic video of the goings on at the bar because Jane Lynch was there. And in that video, right in the center of that video, was me, 41, sloppy, blackout drunk on the dance floor, just looking a hot mess. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I don't know, because it wasn't the drunkest I've ever been. It wasn't the stupidest I ever acted, but it was at that moment that I realized this is not the woman I want to be.
Yeah.
This is not the mother that I want to be to my daughter. This is not the role model that I want her to see. And it took that visual, like seeing myself, but I will say, I did try to cut back. There was 1 week of moderation in my story, 1 full week. I made a New Year's resolution. I was like, all right, I'm only gonna have 1 drink a night. and at the most 4, but I'm not going to get sloppy drunk. I'm not going to get hungover. And so I made it through New Year's Eve, and I did great. I had 4 drinks. I wasn't that drunk. It was great. I woke up, I had New Year's Day. It was beautiful. And then it was January 6th. Something happened, and my husband and I cracked open a bottle of wine, ended up drinking that bottle, drinking another bottle, who knows what else, hitting the vermouth and it's bad when you go to the vermouth in the back of the cabinet, like you've drank all the bottles of wine and you have to like get the dregs. The next thing I know, I woke up in the morning with a pounding, raging, horrible headache. I had wet the bed, which I was known to do when I drank too much.
Mm-hmm.
So there I was, 6 days into my moderation, waking up in this state again. And so that was the moment that that was my day 1, January 7th, 2018. That was my day 1 of the day I decided to change my life. Not to say I didn't have several data points in that whole path, but but that's when everything changed, everything shifted. And one of the very first things I did was I ordered your book on Amazon. And I think it had like just come out, like this was 2018. So it had probably only been out for what, a year? Or
2015 came out. So yeah, a few years probably.
Yeah, well, there was no group, there was no like,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like this book by this kind of relatively unknown. And I'm like, well, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. And because I knew I didn't want to go to AA. That just didn't resonate with me for many different reasons. But I had that very morning when I woke up, I looked at my phone, as we do in the morning. And the very first thing I saw was a Facebook post from an old high school drinking buddy friend of mine from years ago. And it said, someone I hadn't talked to in forever. And it said, I'm celebrating my 5 years of sobriety today. And I saw that post and I thought, oh my God, maybe this is the sign I needed. And I reached out to him on Messenger and said, I think I need to quit drinking also. I'm terrified. And that was that feeling of day 1 was just total fear, horror. What am I going to do now? I didn't know what I was going to do or who I was going to be or how I was going to face day 2 or the rest of my life. I mean, I figured I would just be boring and everything would be beige and I would just be a shell of the former fun person I used to be. No one would want to hang out with me. That's, those were the thoughts that were going through my head. That's kind of what I figured sobriety would be like.
Yeah.
Surprise, it's not. But yeah, it was I felt like I was at the bottom of the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that just to circle back to one thing you said earlier, that experience of having to see yourself on video is like, I know it was probably horrible, but what a gift too, because we can't see that from the inside. We have no idea. I remember the first time I saw myself videotape drunk. It was just shocking. It was amazing. I was like, that is just not me. I've been hijacked, it was so eye-opening.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I thought that was me, I thought that was my whole identity, was this party girl drunk person, that's what made me interesting and entertaining. And that's why people liked me.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing it's actually quite the opposite.
Tell me more about that.
Well, realizing that when I didn't numb myself and turn myself into a clown, my true self could come out. And my first real experience of that was about 4 weeks into my sobriety journey. I went to a mom's night out, which is typically, a heavy wine event. One where I would usually bring several bottles of wine, because what if I brought one and somebody drank it?
Mm-hmm.
Or drank one glass of it? I didn't have enough. So I would normally bring several bottles and probably always be the drunkest one there. So this time I went and I was like, okay, I'm not going to bring any wine. And I know other people will have it. So that way, if I feel really weak, I'll have to go through that extra friction of having to ask somebody for it. So I went there and I kept telling myself, like, okay, you know, the part in The Princess Bride where the Dread Pirate Roberts says, if I must, I could kill you in the morning.
Yeah.
So like, I would always say that to myself, like, okay, I'm not going to have wine, but if I must, I could always have one later. Like kind of pushing myself off for like 30 minutes. And so I went there and I did it and I had some water and we ended up, it was some crazy like clothing exchange thing where we all brought clothes and stuff we didn't want and we were trying them on. So it was there was a lot of activity and just jokes. And I ended up having so much fun and being so free to be myself and be silly, and that people were asking me, oh, can I get you another glass of wine? And I was like, oh no, thanks. I'm good. I'm not drinking. And I just like, I had water the whole time. And people thought I was drunk because I was fun. And then I left and I was like, I mean, I hadn't felt that high, like vibration and just buzzing and yeah, in years. And coming out of that night, feeling like, okay, I really am, you know, a fun person and people really do like to be around me and I can do this. I can be in a social situation and hold my own and have a good time. Like that's the proof. That's the proof that I needed. It's like the rewiring those neural pathways. Okay, now I have an experience to connect this to, you know, now I can go back to that experience the next time I might feel a craving or feel a temptation or a weakness.
Wow, I love that. That's so awesome. That's really cool. So you kind of made this burn the boat sort of decision, and then what happened?
So the journey began. I started finding myself. I started doing yoga. I started meditating. Mindfulness became a huge, huge piece of coming back to myself. And that whole fear of, you know, my soul, like drinking, taking everything from me was, I mean, that evaporated within days because I realized like, oh, can I cuss? Oh shit, my soul is like here, it's here. Like it's always been here. And I was covering it up with this costume of this drunk girl. And so through that process, I started rediscovering things about myself. Like, it's kind of like an LOL surprise. Like I have these little packages and I like open it up and be like, oh my gosh, here's this other thing I love to do. I would ride bikes. I haven't ridden a bike since I was 17. Yeah, let's get a bike. Like, oh, writing. Oh my gosh, I haven't written since I was in high school and I started writing. Just all these things. I started learning about loose leaf teas and making myself tea rituals. I started painting again and just, it was amazing just discovering like each day, like opening up this new package of, oh, this is who I am. Wow. And realizing that I was really so much more of a full person than I ever gave myself credit for, because I was always like dampening it down and numbing it with alcohol.
Just awesome. So did you have, you know, you mentioned like a few data points, like was it difficult at times? It sounds like it was pretty awesome for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, when I say data points, it's more like for a while I would treat myself to a beer, like a monthly beer. I would have this monthly beer at a mom's event or whatever. And I'd make this big deal about it. Hey, everybody, I'm having my monthly beer. You know, I don't know if it was just to prove to myself and to everybody else that I was in control. Because now, you know, ever since I started this Naked Mind Institute, been like stone cold sober, and how easy it was for me to like drop that idea of the monthly beer, because it was never really about the beer. It was more about like the ability for myself to have one and say, well, look, Skye, you've just had a beer and then you're done. And I'm so proud of you. But I think that for me anyway, and I think for a lot of people, that's kind of an important part of the process, is to like test yourself sometimes, you know. And a rebel at heart. So if somebody tells me I can't do anything ever again, then you better believe I'm going to go out and do it like the very next day. So to always let myself know, like, hey, that's available for you. You can do that anytime you want, Skye. Go ahead. That kind of allows me to have the power, that I own the power of whether or not I'm going to drink, not because there's a rule around it. Like, that's self-defeating to me.
I love that. So good. I totally agree with that. It's like, yeah. Anyway, it's just really powerful to just completely have the choice back and feel that way.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's
Yeah.
so good. So let's talk about some of what you're doing now, because I know you've written a book, which you sent me, and I'd love you to talk about that.
Yeah. I'm going to hold it up.
Yay. Tell us about the title.
Yeah. So it's titled Unexpected Alchemy, Poems of Addiction and Awakening. And so poetry was one of those things that, like, as I'm opening up the LOL surprise of my life, like poetry was, it used to be a love of mine. And so I started bringing it back. And what I found was that all that old shame that had accumulated from my 25 plus so years of drinking, it's still in there because I never really processed it. I just numbed it. And once I got sober, all those shame things, they would pop up here and there, things that I thought that I dealt with years ago. And I found that poetry was a hugely beneficial way for me to take something that was dark and to get it out and turn it into something that was now beautiful. So a lot of the poems in that book came from that place. And a few of them like woke me up in the middle of the night. Like I had these phrases of stuff that happened, a decade or so ago that I thought, man, I thought I dealt with that, but bam, here it was. And it was coming up in these words and phrases. And so I had to wake up and sit down and write them out. And then when I was done, it was like, like this whole just exhale release of something that I hadn't even realized I had been hanging on to. So the book about alchemy is about taking something that's rough and raw and dirty and burning it down to the bone, dissolving it, making it formless so that it can then begin to be transformed and through this process of transmutation, adding new life, separating out impurities, and then really leaving us with this ability to appreciate life. Like the end product of alchemy is the sorcerer's stone or the philosopher's stone, like the stone of knowledge. And to me, that just means the ability to see beauty in life, in everyday things, even in things that might be challenging.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a cool thing. I had a friend tell me recently in her whole journey, she's like, I feel like the golden Buddha who just got like the first piece of mud cracked off, because of course nobody knew the Buddha was made of gold for a long time. And then it was like, oh, there's something else underneath here that we've just been covering up, which is really cool.
Yeah, and everyone has it. And that's the most amazing thing. It's that we're all made of that soul of love. I mean, every single person can access it. Yeah. And that's my whole goal with like sharing the poems and helping other people to write and speak their truth, is to give everybody permission to just go in there and find that love and the golden Buddha. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, tell us more about like your coaching and helping other people. I'd love to hear about that.
So I went through your training last year, and it just transformational for me. I found it from my aunt, who actually went through the alcohol experiment in January. She had been reading my blog and got reference to you through my blog, joined the alcohol experiment and quit drinking. And now she's been sober for over a year. So yay.
That's awesome.
So I started my business, Soul's Truth Coaching, in August of 2021. And the goal of Soul's Truth is to really help women ignite their personal power and take back control over drinking. So one of the things I've been doing in my community is hosting these women's open mic prose and poetry, where women can come. It's not about literature. It's not about how good or whatever your writing is. It's simply a space where women can come in a safe space with other women and speak their truth, speak their stories, and be heard and be seen. And I think that's just something that's so needed. And it's been so powerful to watch. There was a woman that just came to the microphone, and 3 words in, she just started bawling. She just stood there at the microphone and just sobbed and sobbed. And we went up and we held her, and everybody just held space for her while she just released it all. And she made it through her piece. I mean, it was just like you could feel in the room, just like this love and acceptance and release of all of that shame that we carry as women for the experiences that we in society pile on ourselves.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Really cool. And doing it, in person, we've been so separated from each other. And so to be able to do that together, it's just awesome. I love that. Okay, so two questions to kind of finish us out, which is, first, where could people find you? Should they want to learn more about these open mic nights or what you're up to or the book?
They can find me on soulstruthcoaching.com. And they can also find the book, unexpectedalchemybook.com. So it's available on Amazon. Or on my website as well.
Awesome. So good. So let me ask you the question I kind of finished these up with, which is, if you were going to go back to Skye, who was, watching that video of the night before, or perhaps the one who was so terrified, having those risky weekends and just so terrified that she wouldn't even allow herself to consider not drinking because the prospect was just so out of possibility of living a good life. What would you tell her? How would you encourage her?
I would tell her, first of all, that it's going to be okay. And I would tell her that she's so much stronger than she realizes. That it's like Glinda, the good witch, says, you've always had the power within you. I would tell her to be still, be quiet, and listen. Listen to what the universe has to tell you.
I love that. It's so awesome. Is there anything else you want to talk about or share?
No, that's it. I really appreciate you talking to me today and let me talk about my book. It's my baby. It's the thing I never in a million years would have thought I could have produced when I was in a state of constant inebriation and hanging over. It's amazing when you can start stringing days together, the kinds of things that you can put out into the world. I mean,
Yeah, it is amazing. There's so much more inside each of us that we don't realize because we're just numbing it away. That's just so great. Well, thank you so much, Skye. It's been really fun and great to get to know you better. And thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, it's Annie Grace. I wanted to interrupt this podcast, I guess the end of this podcast, to say that if you're totally serious about actually and truly and forevermore transforming your relationship with alcohol, really leaving it behind in the rearview mirror for once and forever, and changing your psychology about it, we have a program called The Path that I've created specifically for you. Now, it's not for you if you're still dabbling or trying to figure out where you want to be, or maybe even if you still want to moderate. All those things are fine. That's great. But if you're beyond that and you're like, no, I just want to be done with this. I'm ready to invest some time and I'm ready to just make this happen. I want the answer. I want the easy way out. Then I want you to check out nakedmindpath.com and join us in the path, where you receive coach guided and community support so that you can truly make this lasting change that you want in your life. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.